Well, hello and welcome to Enrichment on the Go. My name is Tanya Lofty, and I am with today. It is my honor to be with Dr. Campbell. I love to call him Professor. I'm going to just tell you a little bit about him. He is an amazing education, just in the field of education. He's done so many things. So, Wendell Campbell serves as the broad chairman for the Edward C. Mazik Parent Child Center in Washington, D.C., and also serves as the president of the local Black Child Development Institute affiliate in metropolitan D.C. He has been involved in early education, and Head Start for 26 years, serving in various leadership positions. In addition, he is the adjunct associate professor in the School of Graduate and Professional Studies at Washington Adventist University in Tacoma Park, Maryland. Whoop whoop! Shout out to Washington Adventist. I received my bachelor's there. Professor Campbell works as a consultant with Child Care Management Solutions of Fort Washington, Maryland, providing training services for child care professionals in Maryland and in the District of Columbia. In 1997, he was a National Head Start Fellow. In 2010, UCLA Johnson & Johnson Head Start Fellow at the Anderson School of Management. He was an associate professor and department coordinator for the Child Development Program, which he founded at Southeastern University in Washington, D.C., and also co-founded the Directors Institute at the university. Wow. His extensive experiences include Head Start program management, leadership, parent training, and teaching at the university level, promoting responsive teaching practices, effective relationship, team building, and communication collaboration strategies. The focus of which was on program management, fatherhood initiatives, which we need more of, teacher development leadership, including center management strategies. He has conducted national trainings and workshops for various organizations. He holds a doctorate degree, and his affiliations include the National Head Start Association, National Association for the Education of Young Children, National Black Child Development Institute, and Strengthening Families DC Coalition. Well, that was a lot, but it's such an honor to have you on with me, Dr. Campbell.
Glad to be with you, Tanya.
Thank you. I like to say I was one of your prize students, but that's my own tooting of my own horn.
You
But
don't
today,
have to toot it, Tanya. You were one of my top students. I can say that without any trepidation at all.
well, thank you so much. So, in this episode, we're going to be talking about best practices for early childhood development. And I just wanted, when I initially started in this field, I didn't see all of this, but I am really excited to be bringing this information to parents on the go. And so, what are best practices in early childhood development centered around?
Well, it best practices are centered around the child first. However, you have to have the staff that understands the child. You have to have a staff that understands child development and how children learn as individuals. In some cases, we get teachers get trapped into looking at a class
Mhm.
and not looking at each child as an individual. Uh, One of the best practices is for teachers to know each child as an individual in order to meet that child's individual needs. That can be done in a collective setting, such as a classroom, but it requires a lot of attention and hard work on the part of the teachers involved with that group of children. Um, we never judge a group of children uh, collectively. Each
Absolutely.
one is an individual, and we have to understand as teachers that children are learning at different, at each has a different pace for learning.
Absolutely.
Do they learn kinesthetically? Are they more cerebral learners? You as a teacher have to determine how to reach that child through knowing how the child learns. So you
Mhm.
just can't say this group learns the same. No, there is there are no group of children, no matter what age, that
Absolutely.
learn the same way. So knowing each child individually and then meeting the individual needs of the children in that particular class, um, it, that's one of the best practices that I always promote. I'm sure I've said it to you many times when you're in classes as teachers. So the next thing is understanding the family uh, dynamic, because
Absolutely.
sometimes family dynamics, and I shouldn't say sometimes, family dynamics have an impact upon how children react in a classroom setting.
Absolutely.
You have to understand,
Absolutely.
is this child an only child?
Hmm.
That child will react differently than a child who comes from a family of that he may have five siblings.
Hmm.
And the order of birth
Absolutely. It does play a role. It really does.
definitely plays a role.
And
So teachers must be connected to all of these things when they're working with children in their classrooms. You must know. And you are teaching from a standpoint of knowledge about the child and some knowledge about the dynamics of the family.
right. And I think that's very important that you brought that up because that's why we're bringing this out to families so they can recognize what are the best practices in early childhood education and what they should be looking for. So there's no way you can work with just the child and it not affect the family. We work as a whole, as a unit for the child's development. And I love what you said in regards to um, just the dynamics of the family. They're always changing. You know, if you have a military family in your program, you know, if you have a grandparent or grandparents that are heavily involved with the child's development, you know, all of those things play a role. And I'm very excited to be doing this now, and especially in the wake of COVID, because you have a lot of families, not that you didn't before, but you had families that were losing family members. And so we even have to deal with that as early childhood educators, where we're really being sensitive to families' needs, and that's where that individual perspective comes in, and working with the child individually.
And I was going to say, in
Uh-huh.
what you just said, to underscore that, in the COVID situation that we have and loss in families, uh, grief and expression of grief is very different among children. And teachers and parents have to be very aware of
Hmm.
how children deal with grief. They do not have the vocabulary. They, at some point, don't have the understanding of what loss is all about,
Hmm.
whether it be a family member or a pet. Grief most certainly has to be dealt with. And there are uh, books on children and grief and how to help children deal with it, readily available. You just have to go to I guess Amazon or any of these places that has a large library of books and put in children and grief, and
Hmm.
books will come up that will be age appropriate for the age of the child who is suffering through that. Now, some of the signs you may see in a child who is perhaps dealing with grief: withdrawn, A child
Absolutely.
who is mainly the spark plug is withdrawn, disruptive,
Hmm.
uh, bouts of crying, uh, not talking, doesn't want to participate. A lot of things will manifest itself in children who are dealing with grief. Now, a teacher has to be sharp enough
Hmm.
to go and do some investigation. This is out of character for this particular child. You've got to get on your investigative cap and find out, well, what's going on here. Uh,
And that's
so,
why it's so important to talk to the families. So in with that, why is early childhood development so vitally important?
well, we don't want any of our children to be at a loss in their cognitive development. Remember that uh, people want to put a child in kindergarten and he's ready. Well, there are some things that are happening prior to kindergarten. And we
Absolutely.
know that children are ready to learn. Well, let's go even further back. Children are learning in utero because what
That's
they're
it.
doing, they're listening to your voice, their father's voice, their grandma's voice. They can hear
Mhm.
voices. I mean, that baby is reacting as it is developing in utero, reacting
Mhm.
to sounds, reacting to music. Those little in utero beings are learning.
That's
So when they're
right.
born, they're ready to learn. And in order to make sure that they learn all that they can possibly learn, we want to start as early as possible. Of course, we have to have some limitations depending upon, and I believe that is 6 months old that most child care facilities accept
Yeah, it's about
baby.
6 months old, but I love what you're saying because even before parents enroll, while the child is in, like you said, in utero, I think is very important, that you play classical music, that you talk to your child in the womb. All of these are very vital parts of early childhood development. It really starts before, and what you eat, the nutrition of the mom, all of it goes together. All of the components are going to work together for your child to be as healthy and to be able to develop at the rate that they're supposed to, right? Everyone, like Dr. Campbell said, no child develops at the same rate, but we do know that there are developmental milestones and things that we should be looking for as educators. But as a parent, I always tell my families, I said, you are the child's first advocate. So I want you to know, parents, that these are things that you can be doing and that you should be doing as well. We're an extension. Yes, we have the degrees, but you are the parent, and so we just really want to make sure that you have the knowledge that you need as well, so that you can be the best. I don't know a parent that really doesn't want to be the best parent, right? That doesn't mean you get it all right, but you want to ensure that you're doing things to make sure that your child has a healthy beginning.
And I just want to underscore, Tanya, the part that nutrition plays. Um, you want to make sure that you have a healthy diet
Mm-hmm.
when you're pregnant, and uh, eating your green foods, eating your fruits, not partaking of alcohol or any type of other substances that may damage
Mm-hmm.
the fetus. It is very, very important that all parents to be, I'm not leaving out the fathers, the parents to
Absolutely.
be follow a very healthy diet so that when that child is born, he has the best possible start. And
Absolutely.
nutrition is everything because how many times a day do you feed a baby?
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Every 2 to 3 hours, depending if there's a growth spurt in there, it may be a little more, but absolutely, it's at least when they first come home, at least every 2 hours. 2 to 3 is sometimes three may be pushing it, but it just depends on the child. But yes, it is vitally important. And I remember even, I want this to be where it's very realistic. And I remember with my first child, I didn't eat as healthy as I did with the second. I was eating subs, and I have my oldest is a meat eater, right? He's like a carnivore. But I ate steak and cheese and things of that nature, and it wasn't the best diet. But with my second child, I ate more, salads and things of that nature. I was very much more cognizant of just what I did and what I put in my body. And so we do have, because it helps you as the mom as well as the mother, because you're a caregiver, you're all of these things to your child. So it's vitally important that you're taking care of your body, because you're not just eating for one now, you're eating for two, or if you're having more than one child. So it's very important that you're getting the nutrients that your body actually needs. So let's just talk a little bit more, because I know and I love that we went back to utero, but early childhood development, like you said, some parents want to just go ahead and put their kid right in kindergarten, right? And so this is where early childhood, to me, before school starts, there are a lot of things that your child needs. And so what does the whole child look like? I know you mentioned it earlier. I believe you said something about it earlier, but I love talking about the whole child.
Well, the whole child is his body, number one, his brain, number two, because they're two separate entities functioning.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and remember that this child will be a social being, okay? And part of the early childhood experience is socialization,
Absolutely.
cognitive development, physical development, emotional development. That consists, that makes up the whole child. And that's where the teacher has to be on his or her best uh, uh, points of
Mm-hmm.
feeling and skill level in order to meet all of those needs. That's one of the things that's taking place inside that classroom. You are meeting the social emotional, because when you get a group of children together, what are they doing? First thing that we learn, or socialization. You make friends, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But inside that socialization, we break it down. I break it down. I probably said this in one of my classes to you too. What are the key things that children are learning inside that socialization?
Mm-hmm.
One is they're learning to share, and you as a teacher have to demonstrate what sharing is, and you have to make sure that that is embedded in what you do.
Absolutely.
Again, I get
Absolutely.
back to the point of an only child, or a child of and with five brothers.
Oh, I've seen it both.
Yeah, which ones understand sharing, but all have to understand how to share, because
It really depends, because sometimes depending on where in the spectrum the sibling falls, the older child may not be used to sharing, right? Or you may have the youngest child who's trying to hide everything because everybody takes everything from them.
that's absolutely right.
Yeah, but you have to see it. But I love early childhood development, and because you're helping them. They're little people. I always tell my parents this, and I always share with parents, because they're little people, right? And they're learning to work through all of this huge world that they've come into. And it's our responsibility to help them navigate that, right? But if we're not assisting them in the early stages of life, that's when they don't know how to deal with things if once they get, 9, 10, 25 even, some adults aren't able to communicate properly when they're even addressed because they haven't been taught social skills, right? You need social
Absolutely.
skills if you're going to walk outside of your door, if you're ever going to take a phone call, if you're ever going to engage in any activity, you have to have social skills, right? So you may be that introvert, you may have that introverted child, you may have the extrovert. And I've talked to my parents even regarding this. Parents, just know your child. It's okay if your child is an introvert, but they still have to know how to speak up for themselves, right? So there may be certain activities or things you want to do with that your child so that they know that they have a voice. And so it was very interesting what you said, Dr. Campbell, because that's something that I've looked at and I've actually talked to parents. We're looking and we're doing assessments or observations, and it's like, okay, they're great academically, and I think a lot of parents, they are looking at academics, right? They want to make sure, oh, those 8, they know they can read by 3. You remember, my baby can read. So, they want them to do all of these things developmentally, but socially and emotionally, it's not meeting the need of the child. So we have to make sure again that you're meeting the whole child's need as opposed to just one piece.
Absolutely. Um, and children, when they come into that setting for the first time with other children that they don't know, sometimes it's a great explosion of wow.
Mhm.
And then sometimes it's kind of like nobody saying anything because each year, of course, you have different children, and children have different personalities. People, they have different family backgrounds. All of those things are wrapped up into this thing of early childhood. Um, and again, the whole child is an emotional child. How do we, and we talk about grief as one of those things that may come to the
Absolutely.
picture, but that's about emotions.
Hmm.
We have to work with children and understanding what their emotions are, such as anger. That's another thing
Absolutely.
that children demonstrate sometimes, and not really knowing why they're angry. Again, it requires a certain level of skills on the part of the teacher to get to the issues here, so that children can understand what they're feeling. Okay,
Hmm.
which is important. That helps them navigate much easier into the kindergarten setting, because
Absolutely.
at the kindergarten, the public schools are expecting children to have certain skills
Hmm.
because they're starting at a point. Those skills are learned in preschool.
Absolutely.
The idea of self-regulation, the idea of controlling one's emotions and understanding that you
Hmm.
have to share. Okay,
Absolutely.
um, that all of these things are part of the development of the whole child, as well as the cognitive development, knowing the basics. And sometimes some of the children in early care go beyond the basics. And when they go to
Absolutely.
kindergarten, they're sometimes at or beyond the
Beyond.
materials that are being presented at the kindergarten level, which is great. And that gives a lot of credit to whatever preschool setting that they were in prior to moving on to the public school setting. But these are the things that are necessary to look at: understanding a whole child, cognitive, physical, emotional, social, just the basic whole child that navigates through those 4 topics.
So this is something that I always because I know that I'm going beyond just the classroom with this. Um something that's very dear to my heart regarding children, and I always try to impress upon parents, is that let's talk about electronics a little bit when it comes to children and what that actually does, regarding their development. Because if they're not, and that's, I want to be clear, a lot of times, children aren't going to sit, your children at home aren't going to sit, and it's very important, parents, that you provide a space for your child, wherever, however, whatever age they're in developmentally, so they can move. Children love to move, they're not going to sit still. They're not, their little bodies aren't designed to do that. And so you want to make sure you're creating safe spaces in the home for your child to be able to know those same boundaries that are in an early childhood setting. But you really want to make sure that you have those set up, a setup at home for them. But let's talk about the electronics for a moment. Electronics, let's turn off the iPads and the cell phones, because cognitively, that's not how they learn. Can you talk about that?
I certainly can. It's one of my favorite issues.
Yes.
Um, we have parents, we,
Mhm.
grandparents, me, have overexposed our children to electronics, and we allow ourselves to be sold on that.
Mhm.
Children can be exposed to it a little bit too much. Children, let me say, need to be exposed to it to understand how it works and how it fits into their lives and what they do. But what we have done in some cases, overexpose it, overuse it,
Mhm.
allow our children to take over and run with it. And we can't talk to them because they got their head in the phone on some game.
Absolutely.
Uh, it, Again, electronics is part of our world now. But as parents, we need to set, and here's that key word, limits on these types of things. We have to set, and here's the other word, rules when it comes to these types of
Yes.
things. And here's the next one: limits, rules, monitor. Know what your children are viewing or texting or whatever they're doing. And some of these younger children are just as adept at it as a 15-year-old.
Absolutely.
Monitor. Put the monitors on because they can easily stumble into something that they shouldn't be in just by playing around with the thing. So,
Absolutely.
monitor, limit, rules, making sure that they understand what this equipment is all about.
Mhm.
Okay. And don't let them get into materials that they're not ready for. And you have to monitor. Okay. If you're going to allow them to do it, you set limits, you set rules, and you monitor. Okay. You can have your iPad, because my grandkids have iPads
Mhm.
from but speaking of that, what my daughter loads onto that are educational materials.
Absolutely. That's
Okay.
good.
They just
Mhm.
cannot go willy-nilly out into the wherever this stuff comes from. No, she's loaded onto their iPads educational materials. During this COVID situation, their classes were conducted
Mhm.
virtually, and the school would send or recommend certain apps and all that to put on this equipment, and that is exactly what she's done. They don't have access to the outer world. Only educational materials are on age appropriate
Right.
are on their devices. Well, one is 7 and one is 4. So, you know, they're at an age where they can.
Oh yeah, they know what they're doing. One thing I love, and I would suggest to parents as well, is when you do turn, if you want to turn on the music for them to watch, right, or listen to, because what normally happens is, soon as you turn on the music, their eyes go right to the screen. Well, we like to play the latest and greatest songs that they like, or Coco Melon 2, or whatever it may be. But what we do in the program here at our center is we actually turn the screens over so they don't see anything. So it allows them, but they hear the music. And so we're acting things out, or we're singing along, but it promotes creativity. So I just want to encourage you all as parents, to promote creativity with your children. I mean, you may have to dress up like a baby shark, or you can pretend to be baby shark, or maybe they're drawing and singing, or coloring and singing. There are a lot of things that can go along with it if you're going to incorporate technology into your child's activities at home as well. So I just want to encourage you all as parents to, kind of think back. I get, I'm told a lot, oh, you're a big kid. Well, you have to think back. What do children like? And so we just have to be mindful of that, because technology is here to stay. And so we really just have to know how to incorporate that for parents at home. I understand you get home and you're tired, but if you create a space and maybe, just like you said before, some rules and some boundaries, that, okay, when we first come in the home, whatever that may look like, and from day to day, it can change. Parents, trust me, I understand. I'm a mom myself and I've had young children, so I understand that. But we just want to give you some tips and tools to assist you, so that, and a lot of times I've seen where, you take the device and the child, I mean, you talk about a tantrum, you talk about, falling out, but, and also just monitor how close they are onto a screen, the how far away the screen is, so that you can save their eyes, so there's a lot of things that we just want to bring to light, so that you can just be a little more aware of what's going on with your child's development. So why are collaborations important in early childhood development, Dr. Campbell?
Uh, Collaboration is important because there are a couple of entities that support that child in that growth setting: parents and teachers. Okay. And you say, okay, add to that the community.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so there are three things that we're looking at to collaborate with in helping the child develop appropriately. Uh, we know that the collaboration between teacher and parent is important. That brings to the table open communication. Let's talk about what the child did today. If it's an infant, how many bowel movements did the child have today? You've got a chart you're checking off, and that type of thing. That's communication. That's collaboration. The parent comes back the next day and exchanges certain information that the child she turned over last night, and everybody's gleeful about that. So you, as the teacher, you're looking for the child to do the same thing. This is part of the growth process. Um, so where does the community come in? Well, with the older children, the community comes in because you have field trips, right? You're collaborating with the community to schedule field trips to the library, to the park, to the firehouse, or have the
Mm-hmm.
fire uh, truck come to your facility. These are the types of collaborations that are generally the easiest to form in a community.
Mm-hmm.
The fire department should know right off the bat that you are a child care facility, that you have children, and if they get a 911 call from your location, that they're there immediately. They need to know you and know where you are. This is one of the collaborations that I like to promote with people that I work with, caregivers that I work, make sure you've got an open communication and dialogue immediately with the EMS and the fire department. They know
Mm-hmm.
you're there, and they know your face. They know your address. They know how your facility is set up. That's a very important collaboration. Collaboration with the library, because the library has all sorts of resources, all sorts of programs outside of what you're doing that are developmentally appropriate for the children in your care. And you want to make sure that that collaboration is set up and ready to go. Uh, you want to make sure that you have collaborations with any social service agencies in your
Mm-hmm.
community. That's important. You may have some families that may be in crisis. You, as I believe you should be, you are an asset. Therefore, you can refer those parents to whatever assistance or help that they may need. So, those are the types of collaborations that are important. And those are just the basics.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the family and the teacher, parent teacher conferences, and uh, assessment reviews of the children. And then that community, all important in that child's development, learning that they are a part of a greater community and that the center and the home are part of that community.
Mm-hmm.
Nature walks into the
I love
community. So,
nature walks.
right. So the community has the opportunity to see you and the children,
Mm-hmm.
making that connection. So collaborations are essential in having a successful child care uh, business.
Mm-hmm. And so, how do you feel that this plays in the home, within the home, when the child is at home and not at the center?
Well, in some cases, the children, especially the older fours and fives, will be able to talk to the parent about where they went. They went to the firehouse, letting the parent know that they are aware of EMS and what it means, and fire trucks and what they do, and firemen and what they do. Making the parent aware that it's important that we have, and I'll just pick smoke detectors. The fireman came
Absolutely.
in and said, "We need smoke detectors. Mommy, do we have smoke detectors?"
We need an
Oh,
emergency plan in place at home.
there you go. And
Mm-hmm.
and that's where these collaborations, because sometimes through the collaborations, you get to the parent through the
Absolutely.
child's exposure to those things that they can relate to the parent when they know we don't have fire detectors. We don't have a fire extinguisher. We don't have an emergency evacuation plan.
Mm-hmm.
Children, once they get hooked into these types of things through the collaborations, they take it to the parent. And to me,
Absolutely.
that's a very important aspect of these collaborations, as well as what I had said before, that the services in the community that can be afforded to families who may be in crisis.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for all of that information. I hope, parents, that you all have heard something that will help you in your journey, because it is a journey. As you continue to, watch your child develop, we want to make sure that you have information that's going to assist you along the process. So thank you for tuning in.